The idea of a transcontinental railroad first surfaced in 1832 in an anonymous letter in the weekly newspaper, The Immigrant, published in Ann Arbor, Michigan. The idea did not die from that moment on. A number of individuals took up the cry. The loudest was As Whitney. He lobbied Congress continually on behalf of the project. Probably the most fanatic of all those that promoted the concept of the Transcontinental Railroad was Theodore de Home Judah, otherwise known as Crazy Judah. After working in the engineering department of a number of eastern railroads, he was hired to build a railroad in California between Sacramento and Folsom. He completed his tasks, but his obsession was building a transcontinental railroad. In California, his words found a ready audience. In 1859, he organized the Pacific Railroad Convention in San Francisco. The convention sent him on to Washington to lobby Congress. Congress was taken in by the charismatic Judah, but the issues of slavery, as well as the related issues as to the route of the new railroad, stalled any action on the issue. Judah returned to California, where he began raising money for the railroad. He held a meeting in Sacramento with local businessmen, and a wholesale grocer named Eland Stanford, a dry goods merchant by the name of Charlie Hopkins, and partner in hardware store, Mark Hopkins and Collis Huntington, agreed to invest. The Central Pacific Railroad was incorporated. Judah then returned to Washington to lobby for the railroad. With the outbreak of the Civil War, Congress quickly passed the Pacific Railroad Act. It called for the establishment of a new railroad, the Union Pacific, which would lay track westward from Omaha, while the existing Central Pacific would lay track eastward. Under the terms of the agreement, companies were to receive land grants of 640 acres per mile built. In addition, the government gave them financial aid in the form of long-term bonds, $16,000 for the flatlands, $32,000 for the intermediary land, and $48,000 for mountainous lands. Work began immediately, but Judah soon found himself pushed out by the Big Four. He died of yellow fever on the way back east, where he was going to try to raise money to buy out the Big Four. Work on the Union Pacific began slowly. Most of the activity was financial, with mobile credit being created, which siphoned millions of dollars from the railroad. The Union Pacific did not begin serious building until General Dodge was placed in charge of construction. At that point, the Union Pacific, with its crew of Civil War veterans and Irish workers, began laying a mile of track a day across the plains. Its greatest impediment lay in the Indians, who did not appreciate the encroachment of the iron horse across their hunting lands. On the California side, the Central Pacific was not hobbled by the financial shenanigans of mobile credit, nor did it have to deal with hostile Indians. It managed to pacify the Indians by giving them free passes on their line. The Central Pacific's main obstacle was the terrain and the weather. Before the CP had traversed many miles, it was faced with making its way across the Sierra Nevadas. Work proceeded slowly through the snow, and often through solid rock. By the time the Central Pacific had made it through the Sierras, and the Union Pacific made it through the Rockies, the race was on. Whoever could lay more track would receive more money. The Central Pacific set a one-day record when it laid 10 miles of track in one day. The construction crews passed each other on parallel tracks. Finally, Congress was forced to decide where the lines were to meet. Promontory Point, Utah, was set as the point. On May 10, 1869, the rails met at Promontory Point. The news of the event was telegraphed immediately to the rest of the nation. The whole nation celebrated the linking of the East and West Coast. The United States was never the same again. It was now a united nation linked by steel rails.